What's going on, guys? No Guides here. Welcome back to another FIFA 20 video tutorial. In today's video I'm going to explain the 352 post patch, or the updated changes that you all been requesting, all been asking for. I've tested this and some other people have tested it as well, so it does work. I'm going to explain to you how it's still effective, and more importantly the new tactical and positional changes that have to be made. I'll go over how the patch affected it pre and post, and I'll be showing you the differences so you kind of gain an understanding of how it's changed. I was strongly to advise you to watch the previous video if you haven't watched the original 352 video. The link will be in the description for that so you can see the previous changes. As the video was very well received as well, towards the end of the video I'll be adding some different aspects, like how to always win the ball back, how to defend with the formation, because I know people are struggling with that. And basically some other game-changing aspects to kind of improve your play, what plays to use, work rates, etc, etc. Anyway, without further ado, let's get straight into the video. Okay, so let me show you now the changes and how it now works post-patch. Now, if you remember pre-patch, when you were defending, this is what the biggest change you probably noticed, especially with the new patch notes, the strikers don't come back on offense. So before it was a 5-4-1, do you remember how the left mid and right mid used to drop back to left back, right back, and then the two strikers used to kind of come either side and of the I suppose you can say the CDMs and become a left mid and right mid. That no longer works. So that's the original shape. This is a new shape. It's more of a 5-3-1-1. It's a bit more linear at the top, but it's actually very effective. You can force it to become a 5-4-1, but I'll get into that in a second. It's best I explain this properly so you understand the aspects, you understand how to use it, and you understand yourself how to adapt to the changes. Now, if you remember on the pitch notes, what it says is formations that either have 4 defenders, or have 4 defenders, should I say, can't have any more than 4 midfielders. So if you have, for example, 4-4-2 and you have just 2 strikers on comeback on offense, they won't come back because the midfield already has a set amount of players. It's the same with 3 defender or 5 defender formations. If you're playing a 5-2-1-2, or for example in this case a 3-5-2, you can only have 3 midfielders in the midfield at one time. That's why if you use the exact same tactics post patch, what happens is that a striker stays forward and your cam stays forward, and I suppose one player does come back, but it becomes a bit of a mess. So in order to keep the consistency, because I know some of you have tried it, I made some minor changes. So it does change to a 5-3-1-1, but the key is that the cam is still on stay forward. I didn't want to touch the cam because I wanted the cam to remain on stay forward. What's happening now is just one of the players is coming back. So for example, in this case, this is on one of my accounts, for example, Gabriel Jesus. What happens is he will now come back and he will basically drop between the 2 CDM. This is what's important. He will basically act as a centre mid, thus creating the 5-3-1-1. The cam is then, I suppose you can say, the cam or the centre forward, which is on stay forward as usual, but now you have the striker, an extra striker on stay forward. Now the way you can force a 5-4-1 is if you manually control the striker or you manually control the cam and you basically bring that player all the way back. That's how you can force it to become a 5-4-1. So if you're still having problems with defending, you can do that. Now as I said, the reason why I didn't touch you can technically have the cam on stay forward and the 2 strikers on comeback and offense. But what happens is it becomes a mismatch because one player stays forward, one player comes back. You want to define which player comes back and which player comes forward. And plus, more importantly, if you did decide to have, for example, 2 of the strikers on stay forward and then the cam on comeback and offense, you're going to have a massive gap between your midfield and your strikers. So it's no use to it. I know people have been messaging me saying, "Oh, can I try having my 2 strikers on stay forward and my cam will come back on offense? Will that help defensively?" No, it actually becomes counterproductive. This is a better 5-3-1-1 linear system. It's very good to reinforce the midfield, but also if need be, you can always choose to manually control your cam or your striker. As you can see in some of these clips, if you do bring your striker back, what happens is that another player comes forward. So in this, for example, this clip is, if I bring my cam back, I can manually, I suppose you can say, let go of him. But as soon as I bring my striker back and then I change to another player, as you can see, my cam naturally runs forward. So basically the game pushes the striker to go forward no matter what. So the only way you can make it a 5-4-1 is if you manually control the striker and defend with the striker. So jockey outside the box, etc, etc. So now attacking. What has changed attacking now? The big confusion is people have been saying, hey Neil, attacks change. I feel something different. I can assure you nothing has changed. I've tested this. Some people have also, the pilot test study before I released this formation has tested it. There's no difference. The only reason why you think there's a difference is because people are defending differently. People who are playing drop back, they're now struggling. So what people are doing is they're playing one depth drop back or one depth balance. That's why you find the formation a bit more difficult. You find that players are now controlling strikers and bringing them back manually. That's why you might find the attack has changed. It's not the attack has changed, it's that your opponents have changed. They're defending very much differently. So how does the system change? Now, attacking, it's basically, you can argue somewhat better. You still have the same element, you still have the 5 striker formation going forward. The only difference is now that not, you see your 2 strikers. Remember how before they used to run from deep and run forward? They still do that, but however, it's only 1 striker doing that this time. Because of the way the defense is set up is a 5-3-1-1, basically the striker that you choose to come back on the offense will run from deep into an attacking position. So that you still have the element of surprise, the element pass still there. However, you now have an extra striker up top. Now this is actually very, very good. In the beginning, you have to get used to it. I'm not going to lie, it's going to take you a couple of games to get used to it. But this extra strike is very important because one, it's almost a distraction for your opponent because it not only does it occupy your opponent's back line, but it also creates more space for the central cam. So the cam's on stay forward as well is going to create more space for him. 2, what's more important is you're now going to have a connect from midfield to strike. Before, you can argue the cam was up front by himself and he had no assistance. Once you pass the ball to your cam, he had no one really to pass to. He was by himself. However, now you have someone in front of the cam in a linear format, so now you can play quick 1-2s between the cam and the striker while you wait for the rest of the players to join and build up the attack. So it's actually very much effective. Now you understand how the formation works. You're going to see this more in game. It's going to become a bit more transparent when you actually try using it in the game. As I said, it's still a very effective attacking formation. The only thing that's changed is instead of 2 strikers running from deep, you're going to have 1 striker up front and 1 guy running from deep now. So it's the same system. However, you just have 1 guy forward and 1 guy running from deep. Now going into tactics and instructions, as usual, I'm going to explain it in an incremental format. So the width and the depth is almost the same. The depth, I've just reduced it by 1. That's what I've done. You can even reduce it to 2. Now with this formation, it still is very effective defensively. The reason why people are struggling is because people are not used to, for example, players, or should I say you're used to your defenders reacting a bit more quickly. And now because you can argue in some respect they buffed finesse shots, goalkeepers are less effective now. You're probably going to concede more goals. So you need to be very careful on this. I would personally leave this on 3. Leave this on 3 depth, leave this on balance, leave it exactly the same. It should work as it is, same as pre-patch, same as post-patch. The reason why you might struggle is because now you're used to, for example, the 5-4-1 is now a 5-3-1-1. If you have problems defending, get a striker and bring him back manually. That's what I would say. As I said, don't stray towards drop back. I still wouldn't do it, especially with this formation. You're going to create too much of a gap between your defensive shape and your attacking shape. You really don't want that. Keep it on balance is what I would say. You can experiment with pressure and heavy touch, but again, understand this, 99.99% of you love this formation. There are a few people that think this formation doesn't work. Well, obviously if you lose the ball with your centre backs in the midfield, or you lose the ball with your CDMs, obviously you're going to probably concede. So bear that in mind. Understand your skill level and realise that if you can't press, then leave this unbalanced. Now offensively, we basically kept it the same. Offensively, as I said, the game has not changed. The game is exactly the same as it was. The attack is exactly the same as it was. All that's changed is now you have a striker running from deep, running, I suppose you can say, forward, whereas in contrast, before you had 2 strikers running in deep. So you actually have more options going forward. It's actually a better attacking formation, you can say, in some respect. Less defensive, more attacking, you can say. The only difference I would say here is that just do bear in mind, do not change these tactics. They still work. As I said, your opponent's defending in a different way. That's why you might feel the tactics are no longer working or no longer as effective. It's because your opponent has changed the defensive style. Now the instructions. Now this is where I made the changes. Now everything is exactly the same. The only difference is as I have my cam on stay forward, same as before. Now the two strikers. Now I have one striker on stay forward, one on come back on offense. So what's happening now is it's basically the exact same thing, except for one of these players on comeback. Now, if you have someone like, I don't know, Ben Yedder, who hasn't got the best of stamina, or someone like Messi, then leave them in striker so they don't move too much, etc., etc. Now, the player like Gabriel Jesus, or someone who's got decent stamina, he's going to be coming back and basically dropping in to midfield. So this is the kind of the person that's going to be defending in some respect as well. Try to find someone who's got good agility and balance, and also someone who's got very good pace. Because don't forget, they're going to be running in behind from deep and then kind of running forward. The reason why agility and balance is important, because they're going to be jockeying. So you kind of want them to have good agility and balance so they can be quick on the ball, especially in bad gameplay, to move a bit better. So that's what the change is. It's just the comeback on offense for one of the strikers, and one of them's on stay forward. This way, one player is always staying up. So if you have Messi in this position, I have Martinez. He's always going to be staying up, and Mbappe in this respect, in this example, is our best player, is the cam. And then my other striker is now running back and forth, that you can say, from defense to attack. Now, if you kept the formation how it was on default, basically the game will decide which player is going to come back on offense. So you basically, as I said, you want to keep a guy on stay forward and one guy on come back on offense. Now, people have been asking me, hey, Neil, can I have my my cam come back on offense? Well, if you do that, what happens is that these guys will stay up front. Now, what you're doing is you're isolating these two strikers. You're basically, when Mbappe drops, or in my case, Mbappe is my best player, he's going to drop between the centre mids. He's no longer going to be as effective as he was. So that's the first issue. So he's no longer going to be the best player in my team. He's not going to be the most link-up player. The second issue is you're going to create a massive gap between the strikers and, I suppose you can say, the midfield. You're going to create a big isolation. There's a higher chance of you losing the ball trying to get the ball from your centre mids or your CDMs to your strikers. So make sure you leave your cam on stay forward and have only one player of your choice to come back on offense. Okay, so now if you stayed until the end of this video, I'm going to show you some defensive tips, how to defend when you lose the ball, how to hug the sidelines to always win the ball. I'm going to show you some extra tips here. Now, the first thing is the formation itself. This is how I only use the 4-5-1 just for chemistry purposes. That's it. In the game, I then change to the, I suppose you can say, the 3-5-2. So in game, I then change to the 3-5-2. So that's the first thing you need to understand. The second thing you need to understand is, especially from, I suppose you can say, goal kick. Some people are saying there's issues with distributing the ball and there's no one really to pass to. All you got to do is simply press L1, push the players forward, and then activate hug the sidelines. Up on the D-pad, get your attacking tactics out, and press the right on the D-pad, and you should use hug the sideline. What that's going to do is your left mid and the right mid, they're going to disperse outwards. They're going to be touching the sideline, especially from set pieces. Now, this is going to create a lot of space. Your opponent can't really read this. It's a very effective solution on getting the ball distributed to your left mid and right mid, almost guaranteed majority of the time. And it's only if your opponent, I suppose, reads it if you keep doing it again and again and again. But it's a very effective method that I found last year, and I've been using it ever since. Now, defending. Now, people are saying they're struggling with this formation. Truthfully speaking, you shouldn't struggle. This is actually a very good formation, not just attacking, but defensively. Now, I know obviously after the post patch, you have to force a 5-4-1, but generally speaking, people are saying they're having issues with defending. Now, if you lose the ball in midfield, well, obviously you're gonna concede. Now, the key is, if you lose the ball in midfield, do not run to your opponent. Now, here's an example. I have the ball with De Jong. I deliberately lose the ball in this clip to give you an example, right? I got two strikers on stay forward for my opponent. I lose the ball. Now watch. The key is, see how I do not run to my opponent with the centre backs. I run back towards goal. You see, what I'm doing in turn is I'm allowing my players to kind of recover, but also more importantly, instead of running forward and creating a hole in my defense, I'm running back to cover the long ball, or the long ball that will be played by my opponent to his striker. So I'm basically neutralizing the threat. So whenever in this situation, run back towards goal. Do not run towards your opponent. Now, another thing is hug the sidelines. Now, in the game, if, for example, you deem that there's no really good passing options available, use hug the sidelines in the game. Now, you have to focus on a radar here at the bottom. Watch, I'm going to activate hug the sidelines. Now, watch on a radar, you can see that my right mid, in this case, is what you can see. You see how it touches the sideline, and see how it basically almost leaves him unmarked. I use hug the sidelines to help, I suppose you can say, improve this formation even more. So if I haven't got a passing option, or I want my player to be marked technically not marked, I'll use hug the sidelines, and as you can see, the play is basically unmarked and he's basically free to pass to. That's also, I suppose you can say, a viable option. Now, as I said, work rates, it is a big myth. Now, the reason why every single player has an instruction is because work rates don't matter. You see, look, there's a big myth in the community. If you put Mbappe on stay forward, let's say I played Manolas here, who's got low attacking work rates, high defensive work rates. Even if I put him on cam on stay forward, he's still going to stay forward no matter what. Remember, instructions always override tactics. It's the same for the left mid and right mid. It doesn't matter if you put someone who's got a high-low, let's say something like David Villa, high-low work rate. It doesn't matter he's going to be high attack and low defensive. If he was unbalanced, then maybe it would affect him. But because his instructions are always on comeback and defense, he's always going to come back no matter what. What's important here is, for example, the other striker. Ideally, look for someone who's got very high pace, someone who's got, I would say, good stamina, because they're going to be running back and forth. As I said, they're going to be running from deep and then running forward. And obviously, you want the pace, I suppose you can say, improve the speed of that process. You want them to run in behind quickly and kind of, I suppose you can say, surprise your opponent. The left mid and right mids, the most important thing is pace. It doesn't matter if I've used players like Semedo here, I've used someone like Martinez, cost 700 coins, I've used Dembele. It doesn't matter. As long as these guys are fast, the most important thing is they're fast. The reason why is these guys are going to be flying back and forth, up and down. When you lose the ball, when you intercept the ball, when you gain the ball, when you retain possession, they're going to be running up and down the pitch. Now, if you have someone like, let's just say, I'm just going to say, for example, let's say I swap Jesus and I put Dembele there. Now, the issue is Dembele is fast, right? But you saw him with Gabriel Jesus, who's got 81 pace. He's going to take such a long time to go up and down the pitch. So let's say, for example, I lose the ball in midfield, and then, let's say I lose the ball in attack, and then Gabriel Jesus has to now run back. Because he's going to be slow, it's going to take him even longer to track back. It's going to create more holes in your defense, and more importantly, is that he's going to take longer to get to the destination. So if you have, for example, Mbappe running against Gabriel Jesus, Mbappe is going to rinse him. You see what I'm trying to say? So the most important thing is pace. Pace is the most important thing for these two players here. It doesn't matter what their stats are. Players like Cuadrado are really good. Cuadrado, Informal, they're very good because they've got very good pace, and also they have good defensive stats, good standing tackle, slide tackle, etc., etc. As I said, even when these guys relegate to like the left back, right backs, it doesn't really matter. Crossing is not the meta this year, so they're not going to be doing that much for defensive ability. The mage is there as a deterrent, and that's solely the reason. Another thing I was going to say is the centre-back work rates as well. As I said, they all have instructions. It doesn't matter what work rates you have in the player. Now, the big myth again, for some reason, people think in this community, if you put someone like, I don't know, David Villa in defence, he's suddenly going to roam forward. It's not the case. Unless you have them on player strike or during the attack, if you put them on stay back while attacking, it doesn't matter. And they're probably saying, hang on, do you have left backs and right backs in your team? Yes, I play left backs and right backs in my team. It's a personal preference because I like players that got good agility and balance. I'll get into that another day, but long story short, it's easier to mark an opponent. If you have someone like Messi who's got low agility and balance, on the ball they're going to turn quickly. If I'm jockeying with someone like Varane, they're going to turn much more slower. Therefore, someone like Cancelo is easier to follow Messi on a turn, so Messi cuts inside as a finesse shot. At least Cancelo's got a better chance of tracking that turn, and more importantly, you can at least make the interception, and they jockey faster. That's why I go for a fullback. That's why for me, I suppose you can say the chemistry is not important. Now, if you decide not to do this, and that is completely fine, I'm not saying that, I'm not saying you have to do that. If you have a normal formation, what I might suggest is if you have, for example, a left back, right back, and two centre backs, you can put, for example, the two centre backs here, a left back here, and you can put a right back in CDM, or you can move a right back to a left mid or right mid role. You have, I suppose you can say, the movement to make whatever changes you want, depending on how you want to play. The final thing I want to say is if you want to change the system up, go for it. The base system is in place. The reason why, if you're watching to the end of this video, you probably know how the system works. And I thank you for that, so you won't be asking any questions. But let's say, for example, you wanted your left mid and right mid to be wide, okay? You can put them on stay wide if you want. If you want them to cut it, if you want them to come short, you can put them on come short. It's completely up to you. The idea is once you understand the system, then you can alter the formation. If you do find, for example, that a formation is way too attacking for you, you can try drop back one depth. It might not be the best, but you can try it. You see what I'm saying? If you're, for example, a very good player, and let's say United Trigger runs manually using L1, then maybe use possession. The whole idea is that the system works as it is. It's up to you to now adapt it and take it forward to another level. Anyway, that's the video. Hope you enjoyed this video. If you did watch this to this final section, the one final thing I'll say, there is a bit of a glitch at the moment. Sometimes because the strikers on come back on offense, sometimes I suppose you can say the CDM and the striker, they swap roles. It's only temporarily. I think it's because the game glitches out because it finds that there's too many midfielders in midfield. Because you know how if you have a four defender back, or if you have a four defender back line, and you have four midfielders, if a striker drops back in, let's just say in a 4-4-2, then it becomes 5 midfielders. The game kind of messes up and it forces a player forward. That happens sometimes, so do be aware of that. Anyway guys, hope you enjoyed this video. Thank you very much for watching. If any other questions, please do let me know. I have started FIFA School, so if you do want to support me on Patreon, or you want to sign up FIFA School, link will be in the description or down below in the I suppose you can say in a pinned comment. Thank you very much for watching. I'll catch you next time. Take it easy boys and have fun with the formation.